How's it going, everybody? This is Dean Rojas with Epidemic Sound, and today we're going to be talking about time lapses. So essentially, time lapses are taking a series of photos over a long period of time and compressing that into a video over a short amount of time to see that time has passed quicker, to get cool visuals, to make it look a lot more interesting. So let's take a look at this time lapse. So there are three things that you're going to need. You're going to need a camera, a tripod, and an intervalometer, or a time release shutter. So intervalometers can basically work with every camera, and actually some cameras have built-in time-lapse settings. But what I use is the Pulse by Alpine Labs. I've had it for a couple of years. I use this because I can connect it to my smartphone, and then once it's on my smartphone, I can control the settings in my camera. I can set the interval time, and I can choose all the settings that I'm going to need to get the most successful time-lapse in the easiest way. There are other remote triggers that you can get on the cheaper end. That's about $100. But basically what you're gonna look for is something that's gonna let you take a series of photos and allow you to control the intervals. So with most time lapses, it's basically gonna be set up as a landscape photo. So you're gonna wanna scout out a location. Find somewhere that's gonna have a lot of motion. And what I mean by this is if there's gonna be fog rolling, if the sky is going to be visible where you can see it transition, colors, day to night. I typically will go sunrise or sunset, and I always check the weather. So I see if it's gonna be a sunny day, if it's gonna be foggy, and then I can prepare for that type of situation based on the location that I chose. So the first thing that you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna establish your composition. So basically, compositional settings are gonna be exactly like a landscape photo, only it's moving. So you're gonna wanna have a good foreground, middle ground, and background, and have an interesting looking shot that's well composed and well balanced. And make sure that your lens is on manual. Lens should be on manual, and your white balance should be on manual. So you want your lens to be manual because you don't want it to shift focus at all. If you're there for a couple of hours, then you just wasted your time if you have some out of focus images and it's not going to look cohesive and well put together. So you want to keep your white balance to manual because you don't want it to shift colors while it's going through your video, because it could shift colors over like 10 minutes to you, but that's 10 seconds in a time lapse. So it's just gonna go by really quick and it's gonna look jarring and not cohesive. So I'm gonna put a cheat sheet right here for you to screenshot. This is basically the interval amount of time that you wanna put in between your shots based on the weather, the type of location. Yeah, so screenshot this. It's gonna be super helpful. This is definitely a tool that I use. Just something really good to have on your phone when you're out shooting, especially if you don't have any internet connection and you can't Google it really quick. So something to keep in mind is that when we export this time lapse, typically we're gonna export in 24 frames per second. So basically what that means is that 24 frames, pictures that you took, are gonna equal 1 second of footage. So I took 1,000 photos over 40 minutes, and what we're gonna do is we're going to divide that by 24, and you get about 40 seconds. So 40 minutes becomes 40 seconds, and we're actually gonna speed that up a little bit more in post. Let's hop on the computer, import the footage, and enter phase 2. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open Adobe Lightroom, and we're gonna take those photos, and we're gonna import all of the raw photos that we have straight into our Lightroom library. Then we're gonna go over to the Develop tab, and then we're gonna take a look at our photo, make sure everything looks good, make sure everything's in focus. Got it, sweet, looks great. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna make some quick adjustments and edit the photos, do a super quick edit on it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna edit one of the photos, and then I'm going to copy the settings by hitting Command C on my keyboard, and that's gonna bring up this window. So I'm gonna make sure every box that I have checked is checked. If I cropped it, I would have checked those. I didn't do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and click copy, it looks good. And then what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to scroll down and select all of the photos that I had taken in the series. So I just put the edit on one of them, and then I'm going to select every single one of those. I'm selecting all these by holding down the shift key and then clicking on the first and last. And then what I'm going to do is go over here to sync, click on that, make sure all the settings are exactly what I had copied earlier, and then I'm going to click synchronize. So we're going to go over here to file, click export, make sure I have my 1058 files. They're going into a folder that I've created. And then over here, we're going to go down to custom text. I'm going to call this Portland time-lapse. And the most important thing here is that you rename it to custom name hyphen sequence. So that should be your export settings that you have for the time-lapse. And this is very, very important. And you want the example to be whatever your custom text is with a hyphen and a 1 after it. So it starts at a number 1 and it'll end at whatever number your time-lapse ends at. So you're gonna wanna set it as a JPEG. I'm gonna put my quality between 80 and 100 normally. And then I'm gonna make sure that it's in 72 pixels per inch because that is standard for screens. So great, that's done. So it's gonna take a little bit to export, but once you've done that, open up Premiere Pro. So this next step, you have to click either Command I, or you have to right click on your project folder and click import to get to your folder. Once you've located your folder, you're going to locate the first number in your sequence. So here we have Portlandscape 1. We're gonna click on that and then go over here to options, click image sequence, very important, and then click import. So what that's gonna do is it's actually going to make the time lapse for you. So you're pretty much done if you wanna just call it right there. You will have a time lapse, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a little bit of editing onto the time lapse itself to make it look a little bit more interesting. So this is a little bit long for me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click R on my keyboard or click over here on the rate stretch tool. And I'm gonna drag that down to about 10 seconds. And what that's gonna do is it's going to change the speed of the clip. So it's actually going to speed it up. So your photos are shot in a 3:2 vertical. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch this to 1920 by 1080 to use it for our video for YouTube. I'll typically export in 1920 by 1080 or 4K. So you'll notice a big jump. It's gonna crop in a bunch. But the good part about this is when you're shooting with such a large file size is that you're not going to lose quality when you punch in so far like that. So that gives us a lot of freedom in our edit. So I'm gonna create some motion in this time lapse. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna click on these little stopwatches next to position and scale. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna create a couple of keyframes for me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drag over these keyframes to a point where I want it to zoom out. So these are gonna be my locked in keyframes, and these are gonna be set to my furthest point. So I'm gonna zoom in and change the position of the video to start out on the traffic and focus on a piece of motion, and then I'm gonna bring it out to reveal the entire landscape. So I'll either add motion going left to right, zooming in or zooming out on my time lapses. You don't have to do it, it's a creative choice, but it does create a more dynamic visual and gives your time lapse even more motion than it already has. So it starts in and it pulls out, but it kind of stops abruptly. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna highlight all of my keyframes, right click and click on temporal interpolation and click ease in. So what this is gonna do is it's going to allow the motion to basically ease in and not look so abrupt when it finally reaches its point where it reveals the whole city. So I'm gonna do a little bit of tweaking to get the in and out point that I want. So that's basically it. And this is it. The time lapse is finished. Super easy, right? This doesn't take a lot of time at all, and once you learn the skills, then you're gonna be shooting time lapses everywhere, looking like a pro. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, follow me on my personal channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Keep killing it.